For over 3,000 years, the golden sands of Egypt have guarded the deepest secrets of a woman whose beauty and power were said to rival the gods themselves. Queen Nefertiti, the great royal wife of the pharaoh Akhenaten, vanished from the historical record, so abruptly that archaeologists have spent a century searching for her resting place, her lineage, and the truth behind her mysterious reign. The silence of the desert was broken not by a shovel, but by a sequencer, a team of world-class geneticists, using a revolutionary AI-driven technique called ancestral reconstruction, has finally managed to extract and analyze the DNA from a mummy known as the Younger Lady, long suspected to be the legendary queen. What they found inside her genetic code has sent a chill through the scientific community. It wasn't just a confirmation of her identity. It was a revelation of biological anomalies, hidden physical traits, and a series of genetic markers that suggest Nefertiti was part of a lineage so complex and so heavily altered by centuries of specific environmental and social pressures, it borders on the terrifying. This is not just a story of a queen. It is a story of a biological transformation that changed the course of human history. To understand why these findings are causing such a stir, ancient Egyptian mummification was an art form, but from a genetic standpoint, it was a disaster. The heat of the desert, the chemical salts used for desiccation, and the varying humidity inside the tombs are all perfect conditions for shredding DNA into tiny, unreadable fragments. For decades, scientists could only get shadows of DNA, small pieces that gave vague hints, but no certainties. However, in 2024, a breakthrough in molecular paleontology changed everything. Researchers developed a process called hyper-focused enrichment. Instead of trying to read the whole genome at once, an AI assistant was trained to recognize the specific degradation patterns of the Amarna period. It essentially expected certain errors, and was able to filter them out in real time. When they applied this to the marrow found deep within the pelvic bone of the Younger Lady, they didn't just find DNA. They found a nearly complete genetic map. The first terrifying realization came when the AI analyzed the queen's cranial developments. Nefertiti is world famous for the iconic bust found in 1912. Many believed this was just artistic idealization, a sort of ancient Photoshop. But the DNA evidence tells a different story. Nefertiti carried a specific mutation in the genes responsible for the development of her skeletal structure, specifically the cervical vertebrae and the cranium. The AI models suggest that her neck wasn't just long in paintings, it was biologically elongated. This wasn't a deformity in the traditional sense, but a hyper-specialized adaptation. Her body was a fragile vessel, pushed to the limits of human physiology. As the team dug deeper into the genetic markers associated with her immune system, they found something even more unsettling. Most humans have a diverse range of HLA markers, human leukocyte antigens, which help us fight off a variety of diseases. But Nefertiti's DNA showed an extreme level of homozygous markers. This is the scientific way of saying her lineage was so tightly controlled through intermarriage that her immune system had become a specialized fortress against a very specific set of threats, but was dangerously vulnerable to everything else. The AI flagged this as a genetic bottleneck. This lineage was intentionally shielding itself from the outside world, creating a biological elite that was becoming increasingly different from the general population. The data suggests that the pharaohs weren't just choosing to marry within the family for political reasons. They were creating a distinct biological caste. But the real shocker, the part that genuinely unnerves the researchers, involves her neurological markers. Nefertiti lived during the Amarna Revolution, a time when her husband Akhenaten abolished the old gods and established the world's first recorded monotheistic religion, worshipping the sun disk, the A10, almost violent shift in human consciousness. The AI analysis of Nefertiti's genome revealed a cluster of variants in the genes related to neuroplasticity and the processing of sensory information. Scientists found that she had a significantly higher density of receptors for dopamine and serotonin in the prefrontal cortex than the average human. The AI's cognitive simulations suggested that she experienced the world with an intensity that most of us cannot imagine. This wasn't just high intelligence. It was a state of hyper-awareness. To the people of ancient Egypt, this probably looked like divine inspiration or prophecy. To modern scientists, it looks like a biological predisposition for visionary, or perhaps even obsessive behavior. She and Akhenaten weren't just changing religion, their very brains were wired differently from the people they ruled. Furthermore, The genetic analysis revealed a unique adaptation to light. The AI found that Nefertiti's eyes possessed a rare variant of the OPN1LW gene, which relates to red light perception. In the context of the A10 religion, which focused entirely on the visible rays of the sun, this is mind-blowing. The AI suggests her vision was tuned to a specific part of the light spectrum that allowed her to see subtle variations in solar radiation and atmospheric heat. When she stood in the sun-drenched courtyards of her city, Akhenaten, she wasn't just feeling the heat, she was likely seeing a world of color and light that was invisible to her subjects. This biological supervision provides a terrifyingly literal basis for her supposed connection to the sun god. She wasn't just a queen, she was a biological sensor, tuned to the frequencies of the desert sun. The terror in the discovery also lies in the evidence of her end. For years, the disappearance of Nefertiti has been a black hole in history. Some thought she became a co-regent under the name Semkur, while others thought she fell from grace. The DNA analysis of the younger lady's remains showed massive amounts of epigenetic stress markers. These are the chemical tags that appear on DNA when a person undergoes extreme trauma or prolonged periods of intense pressure. The AI found that in the final years of her life, Nefertiti's system was flooded with stress-regulating hormones that had essentially begun to break down her cellular repair mechanisms. The data suggests she wasn't just a political leader who faded away, she was a person whose biological fortress was collapsing under the weight of her own revolution. The AI reconstructed a timeline of her final months, showing a rapid, systemic decline, indicating that the very traits that made her powerful, her hyper-awareness and her specialized physiology, ultimately became her undoing. Another terrifying find was the discovery of a non-human biological signature within the marrow samples. At first, the researchers feared contamination from modern lab workers. But the AI identified the signature as a prehistoric, now extinct form of a viral organism that had integrated itself into the queen's genome. This is known as an endogenous retrovirus. But Nefertiti's was active. The AI's reconstruction showed that this ancient virus was interacting with her skin pigmentation genes. This suggests that her radiant appearance, often described in ancient texts as glowing like the sun, might have had a pathological or viral origin. The Queen of Beauty may have been carrying a prehistoric biological passenger that altered her physical appearance in ways that were viewed as divine, her contemporaries, but would be seen as a medical anomaly today. The AI also uncovered a secret regarding her true origin. While many assumed she was a foreign princess from the Mitanni kingdom, the DNA confirms she was 100% Egyptian, but from a very specific, isolated pool of the Nile Delta. Her ancestors had lived in a state of geographical and biological isolation for nearly 500 years before she entered the royal court. This purity was so extreme that it caused a series of micro-mutations in her metabolic system. She didn't process food or oxygen the same way commoners did. The AI found that her body was optimized for a very low protein, high mineral diet, specifically the types of grains and water found only in the royal enclosures. If she had ever been forced to live like an average person of her time, through generations of isolation, to live only in a palace. The ethical dilemma this discovery presents is immense. We are looking at the blueprint of a woman who was perhaps the first designer human in history. Not through technology, but through the extreme social engineering of the Egyptian royalty. The AI's find suggests that the terrifying part isn't just a single mutation. Nefertiti was the pinnacle of this experiment, and her power were the results of a biological path that led to a dead end. Once the Amarna period ended, this specific genetic signature vanished within 2 generations. The divine bloodline was simply too specialized to survive in the real world. For those interested in recent scientific discoveries, this represents a massive shift. We are no longer just looking at old bones. We are looking at the software of life from 3 millennia ago. The AI has shown us that the ancient world was far more biologically complex than we ever dared to imagine. Nefertiti wasn't just a wife or a mother. She was a biological outlier. The terrifying discovery is that the myths were right. She really was different. But that difference wasn't magic. It was a radical and unsustainable divergence in human evolution. The team also found evidence of what they call cellular memory of the environment. By analyzing the isotopes in her tooth enamel alongside the DNA, the AI could tell exactly what kind of air she breathed and what pollutants were present in the Amarna capital. It found high levels of fine desert dust and specific incense resins that had actually altered the expression of her lung tissue genes. She was literally a product of her environment, her body adapting to the hyper-purified, incense-filled air of the royal quarters. As the AI continues to process the data, new revelations about her children are coming to light. Nefertiti had 6 daughters, and the AI has begun to map the genetic inheritance passed down to them. The results show that the Amarna markers, the linguistic genius, the elongated features, and the light sensitivity were being passed down and even amplified. If the revolution had continued, we might have seen the emergence of a truly different subspecies of human ruler. But the genetic cost was too high. The terrifying reality is that the Amarna era wasn't just a political failure, it was a biological cliff. The scientific community is now debating whether to release the full genomic sequence. Some argue it belongs to history, while others fear it could be used for modern experiments in genetic engineering. After all, Nefertiti's DNA contains the code for hyper-awareness and specialized sensory perception. It is a biological treasure chest that was never intended to be opened. The queen who vanished has returned, not as a ghost, but as a digital sequence that challenges our understanding of what it means to be human. The younger lady, once just a nameless mummy in a side chamber, has now become the most important biological specimen in Egyptology. The scars on her face, once thought to be the work of tomb robbers, were analyzed by the AI and determined to be the result of a specific type of tissue breakdown. It wasn't just an attack by outsiders. Her own body was the battleground. The AI's physical reconstruction of her final days is a haunting portrait of a woman who was losing her grip on a world she had helped to reinvent. In the end, the analysis of Nefertiti's DNA reminds us that the past is never truly gone. It is written in our cells, waiting for the technology to catch up and read the story. The AI found a queen who was a vision of perfection, but a perfection that was terrifyingly fragile. She was a woman who saw the world in colors we cannot see. The sands of Egypt may have hidden her for a while, but the code she carried is eternal. As researchers move forward, they are looking for Akhenaten's DNA to complete the picture. If Nefertiti was this unique, what will her husband's code reveal? The AI suggests that the two of them together represented a biological event that should have been impossible. They were the architects of a new world, but they were also the victims of their own biology. The study of Nefertiti's DNA is just the beginning of a new era, where we don't just study history, we deconstruct it, base pair by base pair. The terrifying results of this study serve as a warning and a wonder. They show the incredible plasticity of the human body and mind, but also the dangerous limits of isolation and specialization. A queen designed for a sun god, living in a palace of light, but carrying a genetic burden that eventually became too heavy to bear. Her story, now revealed by AI, is a masterpiece of biological drama accurately preserved for 3,000 years. Scientists are already using the findings to study modern neuroplasticity. The visionary genes found in Nefertiti are providing clues for how to treat modern cognitive disorders. Her ancient DNA is helping to heal people today. It's a strange and beautiful irony. The queen of the past is contributing to the science of the future, but the mystery of her final resting place remains. Even with her DNA in hand, we do not know where she was eventually laid to rest after the city of Amarna was abandoned. Perhaps she wanted it that way, to leave only her code behind as a puzzle for the future. The AI-driven reconstruction of her internal organs also showed a heart that was genetically predisposed to an incredibly high resting rate, suggesting her entire metabolism was running faster than normal. In a sense, living life at double speed. Every thought, every heartbeat was faster and more intense. This explains her incredible energy in reorganizing the Egyptian state, but also her early decline. She burned bright, like the Aten she worshipped, but her flame was destined to consume her. As we look at the face of the AI's reconstructed Nefertiti, we see a woman who is both familiar and totally alien. Her features are hauntingly beautiful, but there is an intensity in her amber hazel eyes that is hard to look at for long. The terrifying discovery isn't that she was a monster, it's that she was so much more than a human. She was the first glimpse of what happens when the human genome is pushed to its absolute limits by the tides of history and the whims of power. The project lead noted that when the AI finished the final rendering of her genetic profile, the room went silent. It was as if they had accidentally summoned a presence from the past that they weren't prepared to meet. Nefertiti's DNA is more than just a scientific finding, it's a biological epic, a story of a woman who was almost a goddess, but was ultimately a prisoner of her own extraordinary cells. Her legacy is no longer just in stone and gold, but in the data that will fascinate and terrify us for generations to come. This discovery confirms that we are just at the beginning of what AI can reveal about our ancestors. Every mummy in the Cairo Museum is a potential dataset, a window into a different way of being. But Nefertiti will always be the most significant. She was the one who dared to change everything, and her DNA proves that she had the biological equipment to do it. The Virgin Queen of the Sun leaves us with more questions than answers. But one thing is certain, she was never meant to be forgotten. And now, thanks to science, she never will be. Mutation, and the absolute power of the human spirit to reshape itself. It is a story that was buried in the tomb of the younger lady, waiting for a machine that could think like a human, but see like a god. Now that the code is cracked, we can finally see Nefertiti for who she was. A radiant, fragile, and utterly terrifying masterpiece of human evolution. The mystery of the queen is solved, but the wonder of her biology will remain a part of our scientific journey forever. She is the eternal queen, written in a code that time itself could not erase.